Hello, and a very warm welcome to my very first ever podcast. So, this podcast will be mostly spiritual stuff, but we might delve into a little about my indie author life and all the other different variations of whatever I think you might find interesting. So, a little bit about me to start with. My name is Orla Allen, obviously from my voice. I am Irish. I was born in Dublin back in the very, very, very end of the 70s. And I'm here to talk to you about all things spiritual and all things which I think you'll find interesting. So I live currently in Scotland, and I have an online circle, which if you're interested in, you're more than welcome to contact me. My email address is orla@orlaallen.com. And hopefully there will be somewhere, wherever you're listening to this podcast, in the comments or in the description, where I'll be able to list that for you. So you can drop me an email if you're interested in joining my circle. And we'll go from there. I'll give you all the details about times and prices and stuff, and we'll chat a wee bit about where you're at on your spiritual journey. We have people who start from completely the beginning, and we have people who've been doing it for longer than I have. So my spiritual journey basically started when I was a small child. For various different situations and reasons, I did an awful lot of communicating with spirit as a young child, some of which I'm sure I will get into at a later date, but we'll leave that for now. When I was 22, exactly to the day, I had a very moving spiritual experience, which is always the point at which I recognise as being my turning point for moving into becoming a medium. And it was at the point where my grandfather passed away. Now, in that exact moment, I felt his passing. So to explain to you what I experienced, at the moment, or at the time it happened, I was standing in a bank on Argyle Street in Glasgow, and I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. There's not really much more that I could interpret that as at that exact moment. My grandfather had had an operation a few days beforehand, and I'd spoken to my dad back in Ireland, and as far as I was aware, everything had been a success. He'd come out the other side of it and everything was fine. Now, little did I know, but they were all around his bedside back home, and he passed. So I happened to look up at the clock on the wall. Now, I always say I happened to, but the truth of the matter is, I think I was urged by spirit to look at the time so that at a later date I could realise that was his exact passing. So I looked at the time. I can still remember it as if I'm standing there now, and that was, I'm 46 now, so you're talking 24 years ago. And it was a beautiful sunny day. The sun was shining in the big glass windows. One whole wall was windows in this bank. And I'm standing in the queue. I'm just smiling to myself. It felt beautiful. It felt serene. It felt peaceful. And it was later on that evening, after I'd finished a long shift at work, that I got a phone call from my dad to say my grandfather had passed. Now, obviously, he'd been trying to get a hold of me, and I'd been working, so I wasn't able to answer my phone. But so I found out, and it was my birthday, and we were supposed to be going out. And I just didn't know how to deal with that. I was like, do I go out? Do I not go out? So to cut a long story short, some friends came around to my house, and it felt like more of a celebration of his life than me grieving his passing. Myself and my granddad were really close. I was very lucky to have an amazing grandfather who made everybody feel like they were his favourite. That said, I believe I was his favourite. So I had a really close relationship with my grandfather. I loved him, loved the earth he walked on. He was magic. And the fact that he reached out to me at his moment of passing was just beautiful, and has caused so much of the future I've had. when I had seen him that summer, he'd had stomach cancer, and he had spent a number of years having operation after operation. Apparently, because of his age, it was easier for them to take a little bit away at a time without causing him too much distress. And because his cells didn't regenerate as quickly, it meant the cancer cells weren't regenerating as quickly. And my grandfather was more than happy to keep having the operations, because in his mind, if he was having the operations, the cancer was being taken out. Anyway, I had seen him in the summer, and I had seen how much he was deteriorating, for want of a better word. I mean, he was still quite the man he'd always been, but there were little things, like he was repeating himself an awful lot, and he was very kind of out of sorts, I think is the way I would describe it. So I always remember sending up a thought and saying, if you're going to heal him, heal him. But if this is going to be his future, you need to let him go. And it wasn't really my place to kind of make that decision for him, or for anybody. But at the same time, it was something I felt, because he was such a wonderful man. He didn't deserve to deteriorate more than he already had. He was still a fighting fit. I mean, this man was still digging gardens before he'd had his initial heart attack, which is when they found the stomach cancer. And he was 83 at that point, so 83 or 86, I'm not 100% sure. I know he was 93 when he died, so this had been going on quite a few years, and he'd had a pacemaker fitted and everything. It wasn't a kind of quick end, if you like. All that sort of trauma on your body is going to put an awful lot of pressure on you, and it's going to take it out of people. You can't expect it to do anything else. So by the time my birthday came around, so I seen him in the summer when I was home from university, and by the time my birthday came around in October, I had made my peace with it. Do you know? Did I want to lose him? Not a chance. But at the same time, I realised that him having operation after operation after operation wasn't doing anybody any good, and it wasn't making him better. It was just kind of prolonging the agony. So I think in many respects I had accepted his passing before he'd even passed. So it was okay, and it was easy for him to come back and reach out to me, and because I was in the right spiritual frame of mind to be able to receive that connection and to receive that blessing. So he came forward, and it was quite magical, because it was after the fact I spoke to one of my aunties, and I asked what time he died at, and it was the exact moment I'd looked at the clock. And now I would describe the feeling more so like on a Christmas day when you've had your Christmas dinner and your belly's feeling stuffed, and you open the top button of your trousers and you get that kind of feeling, the relaxation that you'd have. The weight that was being lifted off my shoulders, or that sensation, was almost like the button on the trousers was my entire physical body, and it was as if my spirit had been released from my physical restraints. And it was that kind of feeling of, so for me, that was what his passing felt like. And I very much feel like that was him showing me his passing as that. Now, a couple of years later, I was in a spiritualist church. And when this happened, I didn't know what a spiritualist church was. But I was in a spiritualist church listening to a medium speak. And for me, the medium hadn't impressed me much. Now, I'm very hard to please. I want to believe beyond a shadow of a doubt in spirit, and I want the medium to convince me beyond a shadow of a doubt that spirit exists. And obviously I'm a medium, so I know spirit exists. But anyway, this medium hadn't impressed me with her demonstration, but it came to the bit at the end, and he turned around and he said, do you know, if you didn't receive a message tonight, actually I'm not sure if it might have been the address, he said it at some point. Yeah. He said at some point that if you imagine when somebody dies that the world is complete darkness, and you're just a little flicker of light. So you're just a candlelight. And if you imagine when that person passes, that light expands out and fills up the void of blackness. And that's exactly what it was when my grandfather passed, because he was in a hospital in Dublin. I was standing in Argyll Street in Glasgow, and he reached across that distance in an instant and reached out to allow me to feel his energy, to feel his presence, to feel his passing even. So later on that evening, I had moments where he was with me. He was very much with me the whole evening after I found out. Now, he was probably with me more than that, but I was busy with work and it didn't fully register with me. But he was definitely with me throughout the evening, and certainly the journey home on the plane ride home. And when he was with me, I was smiling. I was appreciating how amazing he was. And the second he would take a step back, I would find myself grieving him, and I'd find myself uncontrollably crying because I'd just lost my granddad. And for me, it was very clear when he would step in and out of my energy. Now, I wasn't a practicing medium at that point. I didn't know mediums existed. I didn't know what was going on, but I felt safe. I felt calm, and I felt love from the situation. At no point did I think I was being haunted by a ghost. I just felt the beautiful energy and the beautiful connection of spirit, and I knew it was a safe space to be in. I think because I had communicated with spirit for so long that it was natural to me. So to cut forward a couple of days after the funeral, my father hadn't taken it particularly well, and obviously there's a wake, we're in Ireland, there's plenty of alcohol taken, and my dad needed to stretch his legs, he needed to clear his head, and I think for him, he was struggling between losing his father and being there for me. But I knew my granddad was safe. I knew my granddad was okay. I wasn't as distraught as I should have been, and I would have been if I hadn't let him go that summer, and I honestly believe that. So anyway, we were walking up the road, and it was quite a quiet wee spot, and this dog appeared from nowhere. Now, it was a little Jack Russell type dog, had long hair, and it was white and little patches of brown on him, and the dog kept running out into the middle of the road and back in and out and in, and there was no cars on the road at this particular moment in time. But my dad was like, "Oh, would you look at that dog? He's going to get himself run over." And there was just something about the dog's energy, even before my dad said it, that I knew my grandfather's spirit was with him. Now, to explain that to you, I don't know how I would explain it. I don't know if... I'm just trying to think. I actually don't know how to explain how I knew my granddad was with the dog, or my granddad was the dog. I don't know. I really don't know the actual technical side of it, but I knew the dog was my granddad, if that makes sense. So I just turned to my dad and I said, "The dog's okay." And that's all I said in that voice. And he just looked at me, my dad, and never said anything. We kept walking. And up the road, maybe about 30 seconds to a minute later, and this big 4x4 appears, and they take the dog. The guy comes to get the dog and put him in the car, and he said, because we'd caught up with the car just as he had him in the back. I said, I don't know how that dog got out. There's a big 6-foot wall all round my house. There's no gate. There's no way that he could have got out. He was in the garden when I left, and then he wasn't. So we just smiled at him, and away he went. And my dad didn't say anything. He just looked at me. I just turned to me and he said, "That was your granddad, wasn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah." So for him, that let him know my granddad was safe. That let him know my granddad was reaching out to us. I mean, I'd known it before my dad had said it. I don't know if it was something in my tone of voice or what that told my dad that it was my granddad. And obviously I confirmed it for him then. Like, I don't know if my dad knew that I was mediumistic. I really, really don't know, but it was a beautiful moment. It was a beautiful experience, and it's one that I've told to a lot of people. So if you're somebody that knows me and you're hearing this for the umpteenth time, I'm sorry, but it's a beautiful story, and I'm going to keep telling it. So yeah, it was quite magical. It really was. And spirit are quite beautiful. You know, people talk about, and I have to say now, I'm really, really not a fan of these shows that are like ghost hunting and stuff. Yes, I understand that people want to know what's out there, and there's maybe energies and vibrations and stuff in these places. But for me, that very much feels like you are showing disrespect for spirit because you're not being honest. You're going into a dark house that's already, like, being in darkness can be quite scary for people, irrespective of what energy's in the place. But anything that's done with spirit for me needs to be done with respect. It needs to be done with an awful lot of trust in the process. And it shouldn't be done for people's entertainment. And a lot of these things feel like it's just for people's entertainment. And they're already spooked before they go into these houses and these venues and stuff. And then they're, trying to do all these different things and trying to create this atmosphere for people, and it feels a little bit disrespectful. So I think one of the things that I want to achieve with this podcast is to show people that that's not what it's like. Yes, you can go in and you can experience that sort of situation, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about what that situation actually really is in the future. But for me, spirit is beautiful. It's love. It's like seeing your loved one again for, after they've passed, but you're not seeing their physical body, you're seeing their energy, you're feeling their energy. And that's another thing too, if you're communicating with spirit, there's lots of different ways you can communicate with spirit. They can speak directly to you. They can communicate through sound by giving you music. They can give you a reference point, like say somebody was a train driver, maybe you're hearing a train or you're listening to the whistle of a train. Perhaps there's a song on the radio that the person used to play all the time or used to listen to together, or it has some sort of significance between you. So these are valid ways in which spirit communicate. If you're hearing a song on the radio and it reminds you of somebody, it makes you think of them. Now, does it make you think of them, or have they come around and they're highlighting the fact that that song is playing and that you had a connection with it? I mean, that's a bit of a grey area. Depending on your circumstances, you'd need to be in the situation to know it. But if you're thinking of that person who's in spirit, you're automatically drawing their energy to you. So whether they put the song in your path or whether you think of them when you hear the song, then you're bringing their energy forward. So they're there with you in that moment. The other thing too is that spirit are present, so they don't need to be just with you. They can be with you, they can be with their partner, they can be with their child, they can be with their friends all at the same time. So you're not stealing anything from anybody else by spending some quality time with them. Now, the only thing I would interject here, because I think it's really important, is that anybody can communicate with spirit. Absolutely anybody. I believe that with all my heart, but not everybody should. Now, if you're connecting in with your parents or your partner or a friend, whoever it is that you want to communicate with, then you can make that connection. You can feel their energy. You can be present with them. However, if you're wanting to give readings to other people, then this is where the problem lies, because not everybody should communicate with spirit. If you're not in the right headspace to communicate, maybe you're on medication. I've recently been diagnosed with high blood pressure, and I was diagnosed I wasn't diagnosed, sorry. I was prescribed a number of different medications who all had negative effects on me greatly. And I've since had to stop taking them all, but we'll see. We'll see how that journey goes. I ended up with a huge amount of anxiety. I ended up having mental brain freezes where my mind would just stop, and I'd be giving somebody a reading, my mind would stop, and then I would get in my own head because my mind's just gone blank. And it just became like a ball of anxiety, and it became a situation where I couldn't do spirit justice because I wasn't able to keep myself out of the message. When you're working with spirit, you need to take a step back and allow spirit to speak through you. So if you're up in your head, if you're worrying about stuff and thinking about stuff while you're trying to communicate with spirit, then that affects the information that's coming forward for you. You start questioning what you're getting, you start questioning if it's right, where your connection should be a beautiful one of love. And so yeah, medication can be a huge, I was the busiest I've ever been. I was booked 3-4 months in advance. I had people from all over the world coming to me for readings at the time, and then I started taking this medication and it all went downhill from there, unfortunately. So yeah, I've stopped reading for people now. Now that's not to say that I'll stop for good. I still do readings in circle or whatever, but professional readings I've stopped for the moment. I'll probably go back to it at some point whenever my medication's finally sorted out, or my blood pressure comes back down and I don't need any medication, which is the desired outcome. But anyway, so yeah, there's lots of different reasons why people shouldn't read spirit messages for people. If your mental health is bad, or if you've gone through something like a really bad breakup and you haven't dealt with your issues, then you're going to influence the messages and the information that's coming forward by what you've experienced yourself. So if you've had a bad breakup and a partner comes through from spirit and you're in your I hate men mode, then how can you connect with a man in spirit, bring him forward for his loving wife, where he could have been the most amazing husband ever, completely devoted to her and her to him, and they had a perfect relationship, where you're thinking, my ex-man cheated on me and he was nasty to me and he manipulated me, and whatever it is that went on in your relationship, or whatever it is that you're working through, then you're going to influence your connection and your information with whatever it is that's clouding your judgment. So it's really important that when you're working with spirit, you've healed yourself and you're able to not inflict your information on the message. Now, it's weird to explain, because when you communicate with spirit, it's very soft, it's very gentle, and well, it can be really loud at the start. But when you're working professionally, it's very soft and it's very gentle. It uses as little energy as it possibly can. There was a time when I was working on platform and the words would just come out of my mouth. I wasn't processing. There was no part of me that was part of that information that was coming out. I was just hearing it come out of my mouth as quick as anybody else was hearing it, who was sitting in the audience listening or who was receiving the message. And it was a beautiful space to be in. But if I had been in a situation where I had stuff or baggage, we'll call it baggage, if I had baggage at that time which I was holding on to, then either firstly, I wouldn't be able to make that connection in the first place, that beautiful, amazing, wonderful connection. And secondly, I would have influenced that information. Now, you don't mean to influence the information, but you can't help it. And there are times as a medium where you're aware of your own stuff, or you're aware of things that you've seen or things that you're going on. And sometimes spirit trigger that in you so that they give you the opportunity to use that information to pass on to somebody. And sometimes you influence that in your own head. So you have to be very careful, because it's a very fine line between spirit pinging a memory or pinging an emotion so that you'll pass that on to somebody, and you pinging that emotion so that you pass it on to somebody. So that's why I say that not everybody should be a medium. If you've got stuff which influences you greatly, influences your view on the world, then that's going to influence the information that comes out. For example, if you are a very religious person, doesn't matter what your religion is, your religion has rules and regulations and expectations of you, and you're going to influence the information that you pass on to spirit because of those rules and regulations. Now, one of the most obvious things that spring to mind as I say this is, what if the person from spirit has committed suicide? Just think about that for a second. If the person's committed suicide and your religion teaches you, as just one example, and this isn't pointing the finger at any particular religion, teaches you that suicide is a sin, then how are you going to respond to the information that you're being given from spirit? Because it's not like spirit come into your ear and talk to you. Now, I'm going to say I have on occasion had a spirit come and sit and talk to me, specifically in a toilet. Just before I was about to do a demonstration, I had a gentleman come forward into my right ear and say, hello, testing, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, as if I was his microphone, which I found very hilarious, slightly disturbing because I was sitting on the toilet at the time. But yeah, the majority of the time it doesn't happen like that. You know, it'd be great if spirit would talk in your ear and give you all of the information that you need so you can just relay it back to the person. That would be amazing. That would be phenomenal. And that would make a medium's job so much easier. But it's not. It's like hearing this song on the radio. It's like seeing signs and symbols. It's like all the numbers you see. If you see the repetitive numbers, you create almost like a dictionary of what those things mean, what those things represent for you. So if you start seeing a yellow car, maybe a friend of yours used to have a yellow car, and perhaps when you see the yellow car now, you associate that person with the yellow car. So that also means you relate how they looked, their personality, and maybe what they did for a living with a yellow car. So if you're giving somebody for a reading for the first time and you're in the learning stage and you see a yellow car, whatever you decide that yellow car represents, or whatever the person you're reading for acknowledges the yellow car to mean, you will associate that the next time with the yellow car. And that's how it works. So when you are working with spirit, like I say, they don't whisper in your ear. They will present something to you. So you can hear stuff, you can see stuff, you can feel stuff. You can just know stuff inside your head. The thing is that if you imagine you're in a classroom and you're in a learning environment, you will learn a certain way as a child, you will learn a certain way as an adult. There will be certain things which you will favour. So perhaps you like having stuff read to you, perhaps you like repeating stuff until it gets stuck in your head, and perhaps you like to physically try stuff, and that's how it comes into your head. Well, being a medium's the same. There's all these clear senses. I was thinking of all the names there. I had to go through them. I was like, no, it's clear senses that you have, which basically is a knowing of spirit. And whatever you favour or whatever comes naturally to you, that's how Spirit's going to give you the information, because they want this transition of information to be as smooth as possible. But because it's not, it's like learning a language. It's like speaking a language of Spirit. You know, it's just not the language that we actually physically speak. It's the language of signs and symbols and feelings and emotions and all that sort of good stuff, if you like. So when you communicate with Spirit, you're using memories, you're using thoughts, you're using what you see in your mind, you're using emotions, how it's making you feel. And it's very, I was going to say it's very hard, but it's not easy to separate yourself at the start from what is you and what is Spirit. So you know that the communication's coming forward with Spirit, but it takes time for that connection to grow. It takes time for you to grow confidence in what you're saying and confidence in Spirit. So if you're somebody who has a lot of baggage, then you know yourself when you've been worried about something and it's been playing on your mind and you've been rolling it over and over in your head. You've maybe thought about it when you've gone to sleep. You've maybe woke up thinking about it. It can be hard to put that to one side to be able to do other stuff. Now, I'm sure there's people listening to this who think, oh, I've never had a problem doing that, and fantastic. I am absolutely delighted for you, and I hope that lasts. And I hope it's a sign that you haven't had any major sort of trauma happen to you. And I think that's brilliant and great for you. But an awful lot of people will have experienced this. And the thing is that's why I say that where your head's at is important to your information that you can pass on from Spirit. Because if you're feeling a certain sort of way, maybe that's exactly what Spirit need for the client that you're speaking to. Or maybe you're going to influence the information that's coming forward. So working through your own healing, working through your own stuff, helping yourself to heal and release whatever it is that you need to do, then that can help the information that's going to come forward for Spirit. It's going to help you as a medium, and it's going to help your clients that are coming in too. So like I say, I believe that we all are born with the ability to communicate with Spirit, whether it's seeing the robin and identifying it as being your granddad, or whether it's hearing the song on the music, the music on the radio, the song that you relate to a spirit person, and feeling them close to you when in that moment. And the other thing too is we all have these moments, we all have these experiences, and in that exact moment you know exactly what it is, but maybe an hour, 2 hours, a week later you're thinking, it was just my imagination. Do you know, you dismiss it. And it's that dismissive part, that part of being naturally human, that means that we need to prove that Spirit exists, because not everybody knows they exist, if that makes sense. There's been a couple of instances in my life where I've shared spiritual moments with people and where they have 110% believed it in the moment because it was true. But then years later, we've spoken about stuff and they've completely forgotten or disregarded or don't no longer acknowledge what happened in that moment, which I find fascinating and I find interesting. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm on my journey, you're on your journey, and it's not my place to convince you that Spirit's real. It's not my place to make you believe in Spirit. If you want to believe and you have interest or you want to hear from Spirit, come forward and ask me, and I'll happily do what I can for you or pass you on to somebody who's able to communicate with you if I'm having medication issues. But at the end of the day, we all have personal responsibility. We're responsibility for ourselves, and we need to look after ourselves first and foremost, but we're also responsible for Spirit and the information that we bring forward for the client. So we need to make sure that we are achieving the maximum accuracy or honesty in the communications that we're given. So we need to be 110% ourselves before we can communicate with spirit. So the moral of the story here is that I'm not going to convince you spirit exists in this podcast. I will share my experiences with you. I will talk you through topics. If there's anything you want me to discuss, feel free to get in contact. Like I said, I'll try and get my website onto the communications wherever you're reading this, wherever you're listening to this, either on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever else you might hear it, that I find to put it on in the future. I will do my best. In case you don't, my email address is orlaallen at... No, it's not. I'll try that again. It's orla@orlaallen.com. So Orla is ORLA at symbol ORLAALLEN.com. So yeah, drop me an email, or you can find me on socials. I'm on TikTok as Orla Allen Author or Orla Allen Medium. So if you type in all one word, you'll find me there. You'll also get me on Instagram as Orla Allen. I think it's at 0 or LAALLEN because I couldn't get the O. So I used a 0 instead, and the same on Facebook is Orla Allen. Just simple, straightforward. So yeah, you can reach out to me on any of the socials. You can drop me an email. If you've got anything you'd like me to talk about, then please feel free to drop me a wee message and I'll see what I can do. If it's a topic I think people will be interested in, and if it's something I have knowledge in, I will happily speak about it. I do intend to get some guests on at a later date, so if I don't know about the topic, I might get a specialist in to talk about it too. But I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have as openly and honestly as I can. Like I say, my views, everything that's contained in here are my own personal views, and you may have listened to some of this and thought, no, that's not my experience, I don't buy that. That's perfectly fine. You're welcome to drop me messages or leave me comments of the like, and I'm open to an honest and frank discussion, and I'm open to being wrong. One of the things I honestly believe is that nobody should, I think because I've got a history of organised religion in my childhood, and then I delved into a different religion in my adulthood. To be honest, the two of them are very close together, so it wasn't really like a different religion, although technically it is. And I won't tell you what they are because I'm sure I'll annoy people by saying that. But organised religion isn't for me anymore. But I'm open to it. So when I was in an organised religion, you're very much blind faith led. So you have to believe this, you have to believe that. And I've always been somebody who has looked inside and saw what resonated with her and have gone, right, okay, that works for me, that makes sense. I'm going to take that out of this. So for me, the aspect of the word God, this image of a man up in the clouds, all dressed in white, doesn't do it for me. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel honest. Like I said at the start, I'm a Reiki master teacher, and Reiki is the universal life force energy, and that resonates with me. That feels right. I understand that we as human beings can't comprehend this idea of God. We can't comprehend this universal life force energy. But the fact that this is an energy rather than a being makes a lot of sense to me, because why would it be male or female? Why would it be even non-binary? It's an energy force. It's something which we come from. It's something which we'll go back to. It makes perfect sense to me. And like I said, I'm not asking you to believe anything I'm telling you here. I'm just sharing my views with you. And you're welcome, like I said, to tell me you think I'm wrong or tell me you disagree with me. But one of the things that I tell all my students is to question spirit. Now, for years, spirit has been an organised religion. or spirituality has been an organised religion, and there have been certain aspects of it which you've been told to blindly believe. For me personally, Spirit's infinite. Their abilities are amazing. The things they can do pretty much are only restricted by us, the human being, and our beliefs in what they do. So as a medium, I know that my belief in Spirit, or my beliefs towards Spirit, are going to influence what Spirit are able to do with me. So I say to my students to challenge Spirit, I spoke about seeing the repetitive numbers. I spoke about, seeing the robin. Now, you can see a robin, you can identify it as your loved one. Happy days, brilliant. But if Spirit are going to bring me a robin, I want it in the middle of June. I want it in the middle of July. I don't want it in December when they've all got the red breasts and there's hundreds of them about the place. I want to see it in the middle of the summer. If they're going to bring me a feather, I want a feather. Now, that's interesting. I should mention the feather actually, because just this past week, I was sitting in my living room and I looked down on my knee and there was a baby bird feather sitting on my knee, and I just thought, that's absolutely beautiful, and it was exactly what I needed, because there's no reason why that would be there or how it would get there. I've stopped using down for years now because of the way birds are treated, how the feathers are actually got. I always assumed that when the bird was being used for meat, the feathers were taken off, and that's not the case. They actually take the feathers off the live bird, which isn't that's not what we're here to discuss. But so for me, there's no feathers in my house. Any feathers that there are, like my cat has a toy with a feather on the tail, and it's black with white dots on it. It's not an actual bird feather, so this feather had no way of getting in. Now, there was an open window above my head. The feather obviously came in the window to land on my knee. I don't think that Spirit ported it there for me, but I feel like Spirit put it there at the same time. Like, why did it come in the window and land on my knee? Anyway, it did it for me. I didn't need any more. But if I was looking for a sign, I would challenge Spirit for more. And you can challenge Spirit for more. It's not disrespectful. You're saying to them, right, okay, that could just be my imagination, or it could be a sign from my loved one. So I want you to prove it to me. I need you to prove it to me. One of the things I got an awful lot of were numbers. And there was a certain situation that was happening in my life at the time. And so I kept seeing these 555s everywhere. I would see them on till receipts. I would see them on cars. I would see it on the clock on my phone. Everywhere I looked, I could see it. And it was getting to the point that I was actually feeling a little harassed. I was seeing it so much. So I was driving along in the car one day, and I'm not telling anybody to communicate with Spirit when you're driving. Really, that's not a good idea. But I was sitting in the car and I kept seeing these 555s, and I just threw up a wee kind of challenge. I was like, that's great. You're telling me that there's change coming. I get it. I hear you. But what's the change? When is it coming? And it was as if by magic, there was a car in front of me and it changed lanes, and the next car in front of me, the license plate said OCT for October. I was waiting for a job opportunity at that point, and it was kind of taking its time with starting. So the job actually started in October, and then out the other side of it, again, they started giving me the 555s because it was only for a couple of months. And I was like, right, when's the change? You told me when it was starting, tell me when it's finishing. And it came back with February, which is when obviously the job was finished. So I could have just accepted that there was change coming, but I challenged Spirit and I said, right, show me how, show me when, show me, and they came back with what it was. They came back with answers for me. So don't just believe blindly. If it's songs on a radio connected to somebody, why not challenge them? Why not say, right, okay, that song relates to my dad. if it's my dad that's coming forward and it's not just my imagination or it's not just a chance listening to the song, then give me a sign that it's my dad. Perhaps you'll see a license plate with dad on it. Perhaps you'll see a license plate with your dad's initials on it. Perhaps, I don't know. I don't know, spirit or infinite. It depends on what situation you're in. It depends on what your lifestyle is, but the sign will be there. Okay? And make sure it's a good sign. Make sure it's something which doesn't, like, for me to set the question of spirit and for the car in front of me to move out of the way and the next license plate to have OCT in it. Like, I mean, that to me is undeniable. I ask the question, I get the answer straight away. And it doesn't always happen like that, But whatever the answer is, make sure it's an honest answer. Make sure it's a loud answer. Make sure it's one that's acceptable to you. And if it's not, go back to them and go, right, okay, if that was you, that's nice, but that's not good enough. I want more. Okay. And that sounds cheeky and it sounds rude, but as long as you're respectful in the way that you're saying it, as long as you're respectful in your attitude and your love of spirit, then there's no disrespect in challenging them. There's no disrespect in saying, right, that's nice. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. But that doesn't prove anything. I want you to prove it to me. Because do you know what? Then once they prove it to you, you have to accept it. And that's maybe the hardest part of all, is going, right, okay, I believe you. So trust the process, but don't be afraid to ask for more. That's the moral of the story. So I think I'm going to leave it there for just now. I'm not sure any or all of this was what I was planning on talking about for the first podcast, but I hope that it's been enjoyable for you. I hope you've listened to the end, and I hope you look forward to listening to me talk the next time. So have an absolutely blessed day, have a blessed week, and remember that Spirit are with you. They are always available if you need help, and it's not selfish to want to speak to your loved ones. Just be aware though that if your loved one doesn't come forward when you go to a medium, it maybe isn't the right time for them to come forward, or it's maybe not the right medium. But it doesn't mean that your loved one doesn't care. It doesn't mean that they're not around. I would check in with how you feel yourself and how your mental state is. Sometimes when we feel we need spirit the most, they can't come forward at that point because we need them too much, because we're maybe clinging too tightly to the reins. And sometimes, like with my granddad, I let him go in the summer and he was able to come back and share his passing with me at the moment he passed. Which is beautiful and amazing, and I love it very much. But if I was clinging on to my granddad for dear life and hadn't worked through my grief before I grieved him, before he died, then he would not have been able to come forward at that point that way, if that makes sense to you. So don't be disheartened if you go to a medium and your person doesn't come forward. Maybe it's just not the right time for it, or maybe it's usually, I have to say, it's usually that we're not in the right space for the person that we need to come forward. We're not where we're supposed to be. Spirit want to come forward and impact us at the greatest, give us the greatest messages at the greatest opportune moment, where it's going to help us heal. Communicating with Spirit isn't just for our entertainment, it's for our healing and for our own spiritual journey. So Spirit are going to come forward when it best suits us, rather than when we are best suited for it, if I can put it to you that way. So stay safe out there, stay well, have an absolutely blessed journey, and feel free to reach out if there's any topics you'd like to hear me discuss. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I will speak to you all again soon. Take care.